My name is Mayhem Mike, content creator and co-host of The Last Stop on the L, Geeks Unlimited, HieroGeekicks, and The Game Shop. Recently, I took part in an impromptu 6-person conversation touching base on a variety of cultural issues within the Black community. After 3 hours of stimulating and introspective conversation, I felt it was important to share our views with the world. That said, I would like to formally introduce you to Understanding Us, a 4-episode series highlighting modern-day civil rights issues, Black women, and interracial relationships. In episode 3, we continue the conversation of what it means to be pro-Black, who can be pro-Black, parenting while Black, buying power, and understanding Black hair.
Are you pro-Black?
Seriously?
Are you pro-Black?
Of course.
Okay, so what is it for you? Is it the same thing, or do you have a different definition of it?
It is the same thing, but also for me with my kids, as you know, my kids. So my kids are Spanish and Black. So I have to, right, so I try to like teach them certain things, or they'll come to me and say, Mom, this girl has her hair like this, and I want my hair like this. So one has medium to fine hair very straight. The other one does not. She has more curly hair. So one will be a little jealous of the other one because the braids will stay better, the braids will look nicer, it'll be nice to meet. And it's, why can't I have hair like hers? And she got the better hair. And I was like, it's not, she has the better hair. You're always going to want something that somebody else has. And somebody's going to see you, and I explained to my daughter too, they're going to see you in school because you have this straight hair, they're going to want what you have. You gotta watch out for this. You gotta watch out for jealousy with girls. You put coming in here. You gotta be careful. You gotta watch your back. I'm like, I know all these things because I went through that. But my thing is with my kids, that's my focus, to teach them. Don't think you're just this way, you're just that way, or I'm light skinned. No, you're Black. This is how it is. I'm gonna teach you what I didn't learn. I'm gonna teach you what our parents didn't teach me. And I talk to them a lot.
So, pro-Black for you is just pretty much empowering and giving the next generation knowledge of what it means to be Black.
Exactly.
Okay. So, I don't know about you two yet, but we can open that up.
You do all of
Do you? Yeah. No, at this point, it's everybody now. So, do you think you can be a different race and be pro-Black?
No. A different race? A different race? Yeah. But that's not the question that we asked last.
Yeah.
But yes. Yes.
Sorry, wait.
I'm going to interject.
Yes, because.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a fat guy. I'm sorry.
The equality, the upliftment, and the empowerment of Black people.
Right.
Period. That's my definition of being pro-Black.
Right.
And that's what I consider myself in terms of being
Right.
pro-Black. So yes, I do believe that you can be of another race.
Right.
And be pro-Black because you believe in these three things.
Right.
For this particular culture of people.
Shake my hand, ma'am. Shake my hand. Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you.
100%.
Okay, so no. The floor is yours. See, I don't dominate.
So,
go ahead, hit me.
So the question that we asked was more so, do you think that you can be pro-Black as a Black, whatever, would you consider yourself, and date someone of an interracial race? And my thing was more so no, because I feel like when I think of the definition of pro-Black, I think of to Malcolm X era, when pro-Black was more so keeping the family Black, keeping the community Black, uplifting the Black community. And although, yes, if you do intermix or have a child with someone that's another race, yes, your child will be mixed. But I think as a Black community, what we always do is kind of shelter the mixed children. But the other part of the mixed children never do that for us. We take shelter with that. But the Hispanics, the Latinos, the Asians, whatever, white, they don't do that for us. So we also always shelter, and I'm like, well, what happens to that part of them? What happens to our children, the other half of our children? They are never sheltered by their other true halves, and why do the Black community, although like that was a race that was created by more so, slave masters, white people, why do we have to kind of live under these standards? And I know it's something so that we have to kind of dismantle.
No.
But it's just like, for me, when I think about it, it's kind of hard. Because I think race is it's a construct,
It is.
We definitely can break it apart, but it just doesn't work for society. It works the way it is. The people up there, they control it. But for me, it's just kind of like,
That's interesting.
for me, I'm just like,
No.
as far, and what we spoke about was more so like, as time moves on and it grows, the definition of pro-Black has evolved.
I
So
think
the definition that pro-black was
That is
in the
interesting.
70s and 80s and 90s is not the same that it is now in the 2000s and 2010s and moving forward, which is kind of where we disagree and agree. So my definition of pro-black still stands with 90s and below, and their definition of pro-black stands from 90s and above. And I'm just kind of like, well, I still think backwards, but I think for me, I feel like it's the same because the split doesn't do nothing for me.
Yeah.
Like that one drop rule was made by slave masters to divide us. It wasn't really a thing until they was like, well, if you have one drop of blood, then you're black. That wasn't a thing until they made it so.
Yeah.
So why do we still now, how many ever years later, still abide
times
by
change.
this? Time has changed, but
No.
we still abide by
Okay,
it.
so
We don't.
can
We
I?
do.
No,
We
no,
do.
no. So
I
let me.
understand why
You
you asked, I guess, him and her, because she, had biracial kids, but also because he's Panamanian.
Yeah.
Even though he was raised with Trini family members, but he's still Panamanian.
Right.
So I got,
I like
yeah,
that.
so I got
Yeah.
why he asked him. I don't know you, but I know you just said that you have biracial kids. Because of that, I understand why he asked them. But even him, being raised in Brooklyn,
But I don't feel
raised
like
with
Latino is not black. To me, Latino is black.
I don't-
Hispanic is different.
you
because
can't.
Hispanic
You
has
have to
European-
acknowledge
But if-
them
I
first
do.
you
and
do,
accept.
but a lot of people
Okay.
don't explain.
They
Even
don't.
though I don't even
Hispanic
though.
is different to me. Because Hispanic
Okay.
you have European
But a lot of
influence.
people that they're
But his-
Afro-Latinos. A lot of them don't
But
acknowledge them. being
Hispanic
that.
is different. They're not from Europe. They have no ties to Europe. They have no ties to Spain or Portugal, but they still claim to be Hispanic, and they're
Yeah.
not.
They're not, but because of they don't want to be black, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's like the whole thing with
Yeah.
Love and Hip Hop, the girl, whatever her name was, she was
Oh,
an
yeah,
Afro.
the Afro
I used to
girl.
put it up.
Yeah.
But I think that she was doing it for a show.
I'm still
Yeah, I
conflicted
just
with
feel like
her.
she just did it for a show.
Who am I?
The-
Am I
the-
the
Amara
nigga?
Malek, yeah.
But just like for him, like his experience is totally different from an African American,
Yeah.
than from him being a Panamanian. Like both his parents were born in Panama.
Yeah.
And like they,
I love Panama, by the
There we
way.
go.
My
Great place.
adopted mom is from Panama.
Oh, yeah. We
She
just
is
went
the
last
most
time.
pro-black person I've ever
Yes.
met in my
so
life.
it's just,
Especially my grandmother.
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
my thing is like his.
But it's not the same.
His
How is it
experience is it really different than what
Yeah.
I guess pro-black was, or what a black person's experience is in America? Because a lot of things I felt like a lot of things that he experienced. I mean, one of the other things that I experienced when he was in a relationship, like he didn't get where I was coming from. It's because a lot of times he was tying into his I guess. He was really around the times he was with his his Hispanic friends.
Yeah.
And what they experience. And a lot of people from New York just feel like because you're Hispanic and you're with your black friends, that it's okay, that it's mixed.
Yeah.
But you don't want to acknowledge that you're an Afro-Latino.
Right.
So your experiences are different. So because of that, like I used to, and I don't know why, but a lot of Hispanics just feel like they have to be in a group, or women have to be certain things. So when I was around, they're speaking their language. I grew up in Lower East Side, I can kind of get it, but I'm just sitting here like, okay, you speak in Spanish, I don't speak it,
Right.
so why are you speaking it? You're making me feel like an outcast. And for him, he felt like, oh, you're not being a part of the crew and being welcoming. I mean, like, no, that's rude as shit. Like,
Yeah.
you have to acknowledge you're someone that's not speaking your native language, and then make me be a part of it.
Right.
And also, I was older, but also I'm an African American. Even if you grew up, I grew up around a lot of Spanish people. But we do not get raised, we're not raised the same. And only when it's like a cultural thing, like hip hop, or when you can call each other nigger, or when you
But
want
you
to
know what?
dress.
That's how hard. That's how hard ER.
But it's true.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Not all Latino
A-R-E-R.
people are Afro-Latino, and
You right
that's
about
a
that.
big thing for me. Is like just because your great grandmother was an African or maybe an African slave does not mean that you're now black. You may not have you may have black blood in you, but you don't have the black experience.
You don't.
Oh,
have
you're-
never
experience.
experienced
You're not
No,
black
they don't.
presenting.
And it's just when
You've
it's
never
convenient.
experienced that.
It's
Because
That
you're-
depend-
Because
To be
people
fair-
perceive you as how
To
you
be
look.
fair,
It's just
Wait.
like white young
People
people that
You're right.
love all these music
You're right.
and
People
TikToks and
perceive
Wait,
you as how you
wait,
look.
wait, wait.
And if
So-
you don't look black, you're not gonna get treated as black.
That's not true because
Right.
when we get pulled over,
No,
right?
no.
Do they
As an Afro-Latino
distinguish?
that looks white, you're gonna be treated as
No,
Wait.
because when they look at the driver's license and you realize your name is, let's say Isabella, all right.
Depending on how fair their skin.
If you look
Fair-
white, you're treated as
Hold
black.
on, hold on.
He does not. He looks more. Spanish.
We've had activists that were biracial. Okay, Okay, so let's start right there. Okay, so in a sense, what you're saying is biracial terms because you can be Hispanic and be black. We gotta recognize both.
She's saying like if you have like a great ancestor,
great grandmother that was black, and now you're let's say 3 generations.
Third generation, okay.
Let's say 3 generations later. You are very fair skinned, you have straight hair, you have blue eyes, you do not look black in the terms of what being black is, right? Big nose, big lips, you don't have dark skin. You might have had a grandmother who was black, but you don't have the black experience because you don't have the skin to have it. You do not live the black experience unless you look black.
So here's
that's guideline. Like you do not.
So here's
now, let's say you do get pulled over as a Afro-Latina, or I wouldn't even say Afro-Latina, but depending on how your family
Latinx.
because I can't think. But depending on how your family was raised, let's say you didn't have that experience. Let's say you just lived your life as a regular Latina or whatever, Latino, whatever, and just whatever. When you get pulled over, your experience living life is just as a Latino, but not as a black person. And they're totally different, even though you might have similar experiences with the police, with prejudice, whatever, they're not the same. They're not the
very
same.
True. Because with his friends,
So
it was like I was over here, not because they were treating me whatever. It's just that a lot of things that they were into and what they were doing, it's like you're not including me. And my experience and my feelings were invalid because if it was, you wouldn't be talking in your native language around me, or you will be asking me certain things, or you will be including me in certain things.
Okay.
I had to break down certain things to him. I'm like, it's not cool, whatever. He used to be like, why you don't do certain things? And I'm just like, sweetie, because first of all, I'm a different person than whoever you used to date. And even if you only dated black women, we're not all the same. Right. Her ideals and what she experienced is different than mine. So you cannot judge me based on your last relationships. I'm a whole different person. So get to know me and my experience. So that's one thing. Another thing, I was older than them. So a lot of things I'm just like, okay, that's cute. But as for being his woman, I'm going to be there and entertain and whatever. But after a while, I'm not the type of person. I'm like, oh, I can go home and you can have a good time with them. Because I'm not going to sit there and make myself feel uncomfortable for your expense. Especially if you're not going to advocate for me. That's just me.
We're digressing a little bit. Do you feel, though, even knowing all that you can be 1% black or not black at all and still feel like you could be pro-black? Yes. Like you want black people to succeed. You want black people to get ahead. You want equality.
Your neighbors are like
now that's the first thing. So the second thing is, can you be black dating any other race and still be pro-black?
My answer is no.
You make a good point though.
Jody Turner Smith.
My answer is no.
I think you can.
Yes.
If
You
what
just don't
your
expect
whole ideal is what it is.
What pro-black is. I think it's a definition.
Who you lay down, like, okay, like, that's just saying, like, even if you could be a black person, like Candace Owens or whatever. She's black, but she ain't pro-black. You know what I'm
Stacey
saying?
Dash. Stacey Dash.
You know,
not pro-black.
Not pro-black, but she's black.
Or people that vote for Trump.
Right.
Like, even if you feel like, oh, you're in a different tax bracket and he makes you richer, and you be like, that's the reason why I vote for him, but I don't respect what he does. Right. But you're still empowering him to make these decisions.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this is what you're
doing.
Ahead,
sister.
Right.
So it's like, you can be a black or African or African American or whatever, Afro-Latina, and you dating a white man, but if he's pro-black, he's there for your experience and your ideologies and all that stuff, then it makes sense, because you could be with a black person.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense, right?
About putting
you
down,
can
calling you all type of names,
right?
And then be like, oh, light skin is better. You know
Colorism.
Yeah, all that too.
Right.
So it's just like you can't say because you're black, you're pro-black all the time.
Right. So this is what
the definition.
Right. So
our things clash based off of what our meanings of pro-black.
Right.
But you made a good point though.
So what we were saying as we were walking around on our active rest day around Prospect Park was that we felt that you can be dating someone who is not black and still be pro-black. So I believe your idea of I don't know if it's still the case, but at the time her idea of being pro-black was you want the black family to be together. So you want a black man to be with a black woman.
The one-drop rule. Like, I think that rule, because it was created by slave masters to kind of separate black people from white people, that in itself to me is just like, it was created by people to divide us. So the fact that we still, to this day, continue and keep that, to me it's just like, why?
So would you categorize mixed people as black or mixed?
They're just mixed.
Okay.
They are what they are. I don't feel like they have to be black just because they're
Right,
mixed
but
with
they can
black.
still
That's
be
crazy.
pro-black.
Well, I believe
Not
They
that
can still be
I don't think
pro-black.
that's
something
different, but
different
that's
when I asked
different.
her.
Right.
My thing is like, just because you're mixed doesn't mean you're just
Like you
black.
said, that
Right.
you have
You are what you are. If you're half, if
So-
you're
But
half,
you know, just like
For
different
example.
circumstances too, because like look at Boris Cujo. Like if you ask him whether or not he's black or white,
Or
he-
German.
because of his experience
German.
as a man,
Yeah.
because he looks
Compared
black.
to Drake.
Yeah.
But
You know what I'm saying?
But they're like Housley. Housley looks white as
White
shit.
as shit, but she's
she's
biracial.
She's biracial. She
Her dad's
feels like
black.
she's black.
I
But people
think-
don't
Don't
accept
accept her
her.
because she's too.
And I think
Right.
I think
Right.
that
I
is
think
the
it's
problem.
I think that's nonsense. I
That's
think it's
the
complete
problem.
nonsense. I think
Because that's the issue. Is like we've had this rule that we've carried on for so long, and
Right.
we
I
don't
think-
know how to separate
hold on.
it.
So-
you are what you are.
Logic, yeah,
You don't
logic.
have to
Logic,
be-
yes, logic,
Yeah,
yes.
You don't have
Whoa.
to be
The Rock
black or
rapper.
white. You can
Whoa,
be
spot.
black and you can be white. You can be black and you can be
I think
Latino. You
the
can
whole
be black and
rhetoric-
you
The
can be- you
Jane
don't have to
Elliott's
be
mentality
one
of
thing.
how
Right.
Jane Elliott says it best. I think she says like, listen, we all came from being black. That's how it was. Like Jesus and all that stuff. And I have a true belief in that. Like you know, you've seen it where in the studies of history where people were actually located at how skin color can change over time.
Right.
So for us to be at this level of where
I
we are
will.
at now generationally, it's crazy.
People
But
hate science though, so then
yeah, it's true.
hate
Even
it.
still, okay,
Because they're like, oh,
so-
that's science, so we F all that.
Wait, agreed.
They
No, wait, hold
hate
on.
science, so they're like, well, we, even though it makes sense, because you know me. So I'm like, people are like, oh.
Dinosaurs are a thing.
They're like, oh my God.
I'm sorry.
This is Scientology, so no, the Bible.
Shake my hand, sir.
But then the Bible says one thing,
Already,
and it's just
lost
like,
the journey of man. Because basically,
Oh,
it
sorry.
describes why we are.
it's a, where is it at?
You can get on YouTube for free.
before I go pee, I want us to leave
I need
off
to-
where
I need
we
to pee
right.
too.
Okay, so we'll go pee together. No, that won't happen. You'll pee before me and I'll pee after you. Here's what we ended off with.
Yeah.
We ended off with because words mean things and definitions evolve over time. So what we ended off with, agreed to disagree, was that you can't say that just because you date someone who's not black that you are not pro-black, because you're invalidating the experience of all those people who are black and white, interracial, and married each other way before it was legal,
Right.
way before there was any benefit to it,
Right.
when they could have been beaten, stoned,
Jane Elliott-
killed,
Jane Elliott
kidnapped,
was shit, and she's
right,
a fucking-
right.
But-
So
Black
all, and you're telling me they're not pro-black? The people
But
who marched.
not everybody that married interracially did not.
And it's not
instill
everybody, but it's-
racist
Malcolm X,
ideals in
though.
their children.
Malcolm X, you did
That
Right.
is very like prominent
Right.
now.
Martin
Where,
Luther
like,
King was banging white
He
women.
was
That's-
begging. I don't think he was dating white women.
But
he wasn't
that
using
even
condoms.
the right, but even
It's
that
the
being
ideals,
said,
though.
Fair enough.
It's
Even
how you
that-
think.
right,
No,
even
no,
that
no,
being
no.
said, it's right. It's how you think. It doesn't matter if you are. It doesn't matter if you're married, if you're dating them. If you want black people to succeed the same way everybody else has a fair chance to succeed, or even maybe even more, which I don't blame anyone at this point, then you're pro-black. That's my definition of pro-black. I'm gonna pee.
Hey, Chris said, what Chris
I think-
said? He's like,
I think-
if I have a wife,
I think
so the rebel
marrying-
becomes that killer first.
I think marrying and keeping the family black is an old idea that needs to go out because
I
think it should
here's why.
stay.
Here's why. Because
I think it should stay.
Right, I think that point too.
that also too. But then you look at let's talk about the men because I'm a man. I can talk about this. Let's talk about the men who try to uphold that idea. You have numerous baby mamas. What are you doing to uphold the black family?
So why?
Right. What are you doing to uphold the family? So how can you talk about keeping the family black when you out here 1, 2, 3 and you just being
But
a
that's-
fuckboy?
but that's
Right.
them.
But and that's them. But that's a lot.
But that's
So
a lot, and that's
always
so
going to
I'll
be
use
people.
Jodie Turner Smith
Okay.
as an example. Whose husband, I don't know the actual race, but I know he's white, who's very pro-black. Anybody who's looking for the succession of black people to be equally realized and equally treated is pro-black. You don't have to be married to a pro-black, to only black people, because then there's disparities. Like, okay, does that only apply to African Americans? That only applies to West Indians, Africans? Are we not including Hispanic,
No,
Latino
but
X?
it's
Because
people.
those are races and ethnicities we have to acknowledge.
We don't.
But
Because
Yes,
like
we
we
do.
need to uphold
Yes, we
black
do.
people.
I feel
We have
I
to
feel
acknowledge
like,
that.
I feel like we were all black. There's only people that created these.
That's fine.
People created these
Hold on.
categories for us.
Can we-
They created West Indians. They created Africans. They
Right.
created African African American.
But recognizing somebody's identity,
you know what I mean? So
which is fine,
all black.
and we can always smooth that out. But we need to recognize what you identify as. Because me saying you're not Latino, you're not Pan American, you're just black, is totally disregarding who you are in your culture.
My father is Venezuelan and my mother is Trini, but I'm black. I'm not out here.
You can be Venezuelan, Trini, and black if you want to be.
I'm black.
You can be all three. You can be all three if that means that.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm black. If I go to Venezuela right now, if I am in Trinidad, if I decide to take the boat to Venezuela, I am black.
You know what this sounds like?
I am a negra.
This sounds like.
That's what they see me as. In Trinidad, I'm black.
Just because that's what it is doesn't make it right.
It doesn't. But now if I talk to people and I'm like, oh, well, my grandmother, she was a Karen, blah, 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 they'll be like, oh, well, you're mixed. But now, depending on the region, now, if I go to Venezuela, I'm black. If I'm in Trinidad, well, I'm mixed because my grandmother was a native Indian. Right. So it's just
Cooley's the derogatory term.
It's like, and I think what makes me so passionate is
generational ignorance.
I grew up in Trinidad. I grew up in America, so now I have both experiences as an Afro-Caribbean and an African-American. So I see both sides of it, and it's just like
it's crazy.
The mind state of the people is crazy.
Let me say this.
Why do you think like that?
It's crazy. One of my best friend is like, and my business partner.
Is that okay?
He looks straight up Puerto Rican.
Right.
He's Haitian and Lebanese, but he considers himself black because his mother is as dark as this wooden table.
Oh, she's not.
She is Doris is like dark skin. She's dark complexion.
Okay.
Doris?
Is she dark in the sun? Because sometimes we tan.
She's dark tan, not black.
Yes, I can.
She's talking about
She's not Muhammad.
Let me recognize how this man views her.
You can tell that she's not black or African American.
Because she still has like fine hair.
Not about the hair.
Right.
And that kills me too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's plenty of times I had to like educate him because even though he was born here in Brooklyn, and that's another thing too when it comes to just like dating and relationship, you just assume because he's a black man that was born in New York that he's aware and he only dated black women, even though like he was raised by this woman that is told to speak Spanish and do all this stuff. That you will think he's aware of certain things that we experience or what we've been through, and he has not. And I'm just like, how many you only dated black women, and this is what? And I feel like sometimes even if you're in a relationship and it doesn't make sense for you, we need to help each other out. Like we need to uplift each other in education, like as a partnership. Even if we don't work well together, we need to make an agreement to make a good ass dish. Like we have to figure it out. So if I don't work well with you, the next person at least will be a little better off. I'm like, what kind of all these times you've been dating all these women, what they've been doing for you, what you have been doing for them. Because you got to me at 30 whatever years old, and I'm telling you my experience is kind of a little bit of foreign. I'm like, how? You're a black man that grew up in East York, Brownsville. How is this possible that you don't know about the black woman's experience?
And that's his mom.
That's his mom.
She's definitely not mahogany.
Thank you. Like, what are you talking about?
She's a little buttercream. Caramel.
Buttercream. She's dark, but she also has makeup on. She always makes up.
Nah. Let me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, bro. I'm trying.
That's fine. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
And that's my thing, which is totally fine. As long as you're willing to get educated and accept it and move forward, because you have a brown-skinned, beautiful young lady that is part Panamanian and part African American. You know what I'm saying? And which her mother experience is going to give her whatever, but she spent most time with her mother, and she's going to give you when you have us, and she's with us. And I speak to her, and I'm very direct. And I'm just a person that's just like that. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the
same.
Just whatever. And like, some people are just like it, or they feel like it's embraces or whatever. But as people, I just feel like give people what they can learn, because they're going to get stuff everywhere, from school, from their friends, from the internet. But let them know, like, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're different, and it's for a reason. Like, you know what people are doing to look like you, to have your lips, to have your body, to have your hair texture?
Agreed.
And they're calling you all type of these names, but
at the same time,
big bucks to look like you.
Yep, agreed.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you said, like, I was actually, she was at the house, and him being her father, you know, she's 13, some things I feel like you should be aware, but I think sometimes I don't know if you guys are, where Will Smith had a red table talk with like his wife.
Jada,
and he was
yeah.
saying like on Father's Day, like sometimes
Yes,
women don't
yes,
allow men
yes.
to be in their children's life to be real fathers, which is true. I feel like sometimes the mother does a lot, not because she's trying to hinder him, because as a mother you want to be nurturing, you want to make sure she's this and that.
Yeah.
He's at the house and I'm just like, sometimes I'm just like that. I give you education and you need to learn and go for it. I do that with my child, so I'm going to do that with you, a grown-ass man. So I'm just like, okay, she's sleeping and she's a wild sleeper. She has nothing on her hair, and usually when she comes to our house, her hair is done, like braided up, so you don't have to deal with it. Like probably she don't want, no, women don't want nobody in their kids' hair, and I respect people's boundaries. Unless you ask me or whatever, I'm not gonna be your kid's hair. You be home, I don't want you to be like, why are you in my kid's hair, which is crazy, but that happens. I respect whatever it is. She's a wild sleeper. I'm like, why she doesn't have a bonnet here? Why she doesn't have things and products that she needs here? She's with us. There's no reason why she has to pack to the nines when she's with her dad for her mother to provide for her. You're her father too. You should have the same products or similar to make sure she's good. There's no reason why she has to have a big old bag to get here. You should have the same products. You should have that communication that she should be, and when she's here, it should be the same. So I'm like, after a day, I was just like, okay, don't you see her hair is like, and then she's on TikTok all day. So she's trying new hairstyles and trying things, and she's just pulling. One day she came to me, she's like, oh, look at all this hair. What happened? She's scared. I was like, sweetie, because your hair gets knotted, and you cannot pull from the root, like you see what these white people are doing, and it's gonna do breakage. This is what's gonna happen. So she was like, oh, okay, and she was doing. I was just like, sweetie, where's her bonnet? Where's her scarf? Oh, I thought I had it. I thought she did. Even if these kids are aware, they're still children. Yeah. They should be provided these things. So after a while, I was like, should I just wash her and do it? I was gonna ask, and he was like, I'm gonna do it. I was just like, ask her mom what she used, whatever. So the mother at the end of the day was like, do you mind if you do two whatever braids? Her texture is different because of him. I did 2 twist braids, flat twists, them last for a second because of the texture. And I was telling him that, like, everyone's different and it's different things you have to learn, but her being born on 13, you should know that by now. But because you don't, because every time she comes to us, she's well kept, it doesn't give you a chance to learn that. But you have to advocate towards yourself, like, what do you use? What should I do? YouTube is a blessing.
So I'm on the YouTube, so that's what they get on YouTube and learn this.
But that's not that.
So
us women sometimes don't give men the opportunity to do that, but then men don't give themselves.
Right.
Because women don't allow me to. Oh, they don't give me their leisure. Right. So when understand that's if you feel like she doesn't, when you have her, make the best of it. Right. Just like you learn how to play video games or learn how to do certain things.
Oh.
Do the same thing when it comes to things that are important. Just like white people do. Like, I'm tired of educating you on things you can Google. Maybe she feels the same thing. Why should I have to educate you on how to keep up on your child's hair?
So, let me tell you something.
It's perfect. I'll have the
eventually.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to reveal this now. I can actually braid hair. Or at least I feel like I can braid. I know my best friend is like... Nah, obviously I'm not a pro. But I looked on YouTube or whatever because... my family is very big on women. Like, we have a lot of women in our family. And I feel like I'm going to have a daughter. And I looked into it. I looked into braiding my child's hair. Obviously, I don't know. I don't have a child. But I feel in preparation for that. And the reason why I went into that is because my oldest of my youngest sister used to come visit me. And there's a lot of drama that I'm not going to reveal here. But, like, she wasn't coming with the right shoes. She wasn't coming with the right clothing, the right underwear, the right hairstyles. And my stepmother stepped up and was like, when you come here, this is your stuff. And I was young. I was like, 14, 15. I was, like, young. But that left a mark on me to be like, okay, this is something I need to, like, learn from my daughters. Once again, it shouldn't always be that something like this has to happen that I'm aware of this stuff. 100%. Going back to what we originally got us here, I 100% believe that you can be pro-black and be any ethnicity, any race you describe yourself, as long as you're looking to the empowerment of black people. It doesn't matter. You can be dating a white woman, a white man, whatever, and you can be pro-black. I'm still working on this one. Because you believe that, you recognize that we have not been equal for such a long time. such a long time, and it's very current. You understand that this right now, what all these companies are doing, it's kind of like a facade. It's like, oh yeah, we believe. Where were you a couple of years ago? You understand?
Uncle Ben's,
all that. We can go into all that. You don't have to be a fully African American, a fully West Indian, dark skin, light skin, fair skin. You can be mixed. We've had a lot of biracial activism. All right, we had a lot of biracial activists. As long as you're down for the cause, 100%. I admit, sometimes we look at you and be like, you're not really for us.
Yeah. But sometimes your actions speak louder than words.
But as someone who's dated someone who's biracial, who's definitely pro-black, I can definitely say, doesn't matter. As long as you're pro-black, thank you. Because we've worked for this cause. We've worked for white people in a sense to be like, have this conversation with your peers because there's only but so much we can talk to you about.
You know what's so funny too? Not all the time, but the majority of the people that are biracial, us black people, we're so forgiving. We just,
we need to stop that shit, but okay.
The family always will welcome you and embrace you, where the other side of the family will be like, ooh, or whatever. Just like this one woman, for whatever reason, I guess, like in the Midwest, there's a lot of upstate, there's a lot of interracial, what they don't know what to do with their hair, their skin, whatever. And this black woman went on tour, made so much money helping out these women that have babies with these black men. They can't take care of them, learn how to take it. But I just feel like we do that, which is fine, because at the end of the day, majority, depending on who you say, like Logic and Halsey, they don't know like they're biracial.
But they are.
When it comes to J. Cole or Drake or other people that look like they're black, like J. Cole, even though he has a white mother, he looks like he was just a light-skinned black man.
Right.
He don't look biracial.
And even still, they don't really, they're trying to crown him all now.
Yeah.
Because of his white mother.
Yeah. And I feel like that's why now with the dreads or whatever, it's totally fine that he wants to get into. But I just feel like, depending on what you look like, what it is, but I want to ask a question for you. Do you feel like for the pro-black light that do we need advocates? Do we need partners that are not black?
Since I was in high school. We do, because we don't have a leader. And every leader that we do have gets killed, incarcerated, or extradited.
I don't think we don't about the leadership. I think we just don't have the numbers.
We have the numbers.
No, we don't.
We don't have the leaders.
30% of the population in the country. That's a big one.
Right, but
and they make up the majority, so they have to speak on our behalf because it's their issue with us. So
we do, but I feel like we make up enough statewide. Like, we're not just New York. We are everywhere else, and if everyone else came together, the problem is
no. But it's 30. You're looking at a demographic as if it was painted or colored.
No,
but look at the numbers. 13% is not a lot.
But that's the thing. We talked about this the other day. You said any progress is progress.
I definitely agree.
13%, 5%, or 10%. We need to start somewhere. We need a leader. We have none. Every person that tries to
agree.
dies or gets killed or like literally.
But also, but also
strategy. There has to be a better strategy.
But no, we gotta recognize like we haven't been trying to convince people, white people per se, to have this conversation with others who wouldn't have this conversation with us.
We have. It has not been mainstream. But we have. There has been people that have been trying, but it's not mainstream enough. Black Lives Matter is 2012?
Yeah.
But there has been people before 2012 that have been trying. Have they been gone to the media? Have they gotten onto Facebook? And these things, they haven't. What happened to them? 2 of them have died. 1 person ended up in a trunk. 1 person ended up in the river dead. The scientist who found the whatever disease, who was very pro-black, ended up dead mysteriously and died. Like, it's like, I'm not the biggest conspiracy theorist, but like when I look at things like that, it's just kind of like, damn, every time we get someone who's for us, they end up dying.
I think it's so funny because I really think
and yes, they end up being murdered, but it's like, damn, so where do we, every time we try to get a step, like Angela Day, I love Angela. That's my whole idol. If I could meet her, I'll die. She's 75 right now. She's doing a little thing in the process, but she's past her prime now. We don't have an Angela Davis. We don't. Even the Black Lives Matter person.
But they said that.
They said that they're in bed with the white people.
But that's why they don't want to like a front runner because of all the things they're saying.
They know the power that we really could have if we had a revolutionary.
Okay.
A radicalist.
Okay.
But we don't have it. we have the people that talk it,
Right.
but as far as being a radicalist, we don't have the people as a radicalist. We have the people who talk the we don't even. I don't even think we have really a revolutionary. We have the people that talk movements. But we don't have those two levels, and that's what we need, because that's what's gonna get everyone going. But that's the problem. We can't get riled up.
You can't. I think one of the biggest things that's crazy, I always think about this all the time, is like I'm very, very a capitalistic mindset, financial, business oriented person. And I always look at, Jay-Z, I read his book, and Kanye and what those guys do. A lot of what movement in this country is, even with white folks, is the movement of having control and power and money. When you have power and money, you can move mountains. So having that influence as us as people, we don't have that at that level. If we do, we have pockets of stuff. Like one of my cousin, he's developed an application for financial literacy for kids from pre-teen, from babies to 12, 13 years old. It's called Credit Kids, but it helps educate financial literacy about understanding credit from small and what that can do. And he's gotten great mainstream media. You have some good artists that has now backed him with this opportunity. But when you see stuff like that and it's backed by resources, you can create a movement of what you're looking for. I think for us now, I think we've passed the time of those 60s and 70s where you had someone that was, not to say that what they did was not right, they did what was right to get us out there to be able to make sure people know this is wrong and we need change in our lives. But now how do we take that, how do we look at that differently in 2020? How do you look at being able to look at what runs the world now, which is all about power and money? Trump's in office and all that shit, and all the crazy stuff that he does, the only most important thing that he cares about, his administration cares about, is power and money for what he has. And now if you want to think like them, you got to be able to move like them to be able to get to that. I have one of my closest friends, fraternity brother of mine, white boy, billionaire.
I know.
Billionaire. His family's billionaires. He got big money. Helped my family personally, my child, everything. But when I look at his ignorance, and I'm in group text with him, and some of his ignorance is we're talking they always look at me because now I'm the fucking black guy.
Yeah, the token black guy.
Black Lives Matter. And they're like, I'm so happy I can talk about you, my black life, whatever. And then he's like, yeah, but I believe all lives matter.
Right.
I'm like, but I look at that and I'm like, fuck, you motherfuckers sitting on yachts and fucking $1 million houses, you have no idea what the black experience is. But one thing I learned from him, one thing I learned from his pops, is understanding the financial aspects of how you take control of power. And when you're able to do that, you're able to move things where you want.
What I think the problem is, we're not all under the poverty level. We're not all under we're not all under middle class.
Not anymore.
We have the celebrities, we have the billionaires, we have the millionaires. But I think what I've noticed with those people is that not all, but once people get to that certain point, it's it no longer concerns them, because they now have the money to not be invisible, but be untouchable in a sense. I have enough money to not care. My son is not gonna get shot. You know what I mean? So
I'm good.
Let's let the hood deal with that. Let's let the neighborhoods and Inglewood deal with that shit. And it's those are the people we need to advocate for us, because they have the money, they have the power. People will listen to us. They will listen to us to some extent. We've been protesting for 30 fucking days in New York. Okay, cool, we got a case, reopened, but that's it. They painted some words on the sidewalk. They put some PR people in office. But is that all that we can do?
But in New York, just I don't know, even though I'm not a huge fan of Cuomo, but what he said last week about when they asked about the defunding the police, he's like, okay, you took away $1 billion. Now what? Is it going to stop you from getting killed?
But did you hear about his daughter? How he reacted to his daughter getting arrested?
Was it De Blasio or?
De Blasio or?
De Blasio's stupid. He and his wife are just I think De Blasio is
preach.
It's a product of incest.
But that's that's the problem for
me. But Cuomo, at least Cuomo,
clap for that woman.
Like him because he's about capitalism and all that.
It's about him.
But at the end of the day, he said to the person, he was like, "What do you think?" Because they have a little tiff too, and media plays
push
with
down.
it. He was like, "What do you think about the $1 billion they took away?" He was like, "Okay, what is that gonna do? Is it gonna stop for police being, doing all the stuff?" He was like, "Okay, if you don't want to," and he at least had a strategy.
I think
Cuomo
is
he plays the game. He's Trump. He's Trump, but he plays it nicely.
He plays it nicely.
And people buy into that.
And they buy it because I'm I don't get it. I'm like, this guy.
I'm above him, but it's but my
conversation about the situation.
Yeah.
How we haven't had the Congress people get together and be like, okay, we don't want to be police, let's X this out. Let's call it something else, community, whatever.
Right.
And then we don't want y'all to do anything with like, you know, when it's a like a mental, disability, whatever. When it comes
disability.
to someone in this, someone in that, we don't want police being called. We want different things. Right. At least he had actionable things, even if it was a show.
Right.
I'm like, you defund the police. He defund the police, but
action.
that's what I'm like. Defund the police.
Video.
Okay, you take the 100.
I want to see
$1 billion away from the police. Now
see it.
kids can have some of you for 2 months. Now I'm like,
You're gonna go home.
But
So-
then they stop.
Are you
But
gonna
then
go
they
home
stop
and
certain other actions.
They
that-
do. They come.
So
It's
it's
just like
like
anything
it
else.
kills me
Like,
because
you
I'm
like
like,
they're trying to pass this bill. This bill has other things under it that makes it like oh, okay, you want to pass
we
this.
pass this, but then we
But
take
like-
away this.
Yes,
So I'm like,
it's always the little stuff you
well,
don't hear about. But my thing is like so far, you haven't heard not one thing from de Blasio. We defund the police. Okay, now what? Does that mean you're gonna stop the 36,000 million like people that you have under your ranks doing the shit they're not supposed to do? No. So what are we gonna do? What is
Right.
your action
How I
behind
feel about
anything?
the defund the police is like all those officers have a boss and they have a boss.
Yeah.
So even if we defund these police, we're not defunding the superintendent. We're not defunding
It's
the guy
the
above them.
union.
They're the ones who make
It's
it
the
work.
problem. It's
They're
the
the ones who
union.
pass the bias.
The freaking
They are. It's not. It's not coming. These people, these young kids or young men, don't come into the force just believing these. Some may, but not all of them come into the force believing these things. They have to be taught these things.
No, it's a
So
brotherhood.
who is teaching
They're not
them
gonna be
these?
like, oh, this is happening. I'm gonna stop them from doing something because they feel like when they do, you're gonna lose your job. You're gonna be out there on your own. You out here in the streets. No one's gonna have your
I
back.
have a friend who's a police officer.
Is a brotherhood.
He felt like he didn't want to say anything because he knew it would be a confrontation.
Yeah.
And this is his partner. So it's not like, okay, we're just doing he has to deal with this guy every day for
But at the
however
same
long.
time, I just feel like you know what you get into. It's like if you with a guy that smokes crack, you see him, you're like,
Not crack.
he might just smoke crack on Fridays and
On
not
Fridays.
But he's still smoking crack.
Thank you. So my thing is, if you want to join the police force, and even if you want to make a change, and it's not enough for you to make that change, you have to put yourself out there to be the moderator.
I'll
to be
say
like,
when you're done,
okay,
pass it.
Yeah.
to make change in the NYPD, you need to change the union. The union is like a gang.
Right.
You saw that whole thing was like, oh, that union is
out.
The Congress left us and all that other bullshit. I'm sorry, stop and frisk was how long? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
All those mobsters that are owned by the union own them and vice versa. It's not going to change until that union is broken up and make change. So even if you're trying to join the force and have a community thing and try to whatever, you're just 1 or 2 or maybe 100 people. The police force, there's more policemen or the police force in New York City than anywhere else.
Yeah, we have the
Like that's why people was like, why would we need
37,000?
why would we need the National Guard? There's
For what?
36,000 damn people.
Where they at?
Like we're paying $1 billion.
So,
So it's like at the end of the day, even if they want the superintendents want to change, they're protected by a union.
I know.
If the
I
union
figured
does
this was
not,
gonna be
if they
done
don't
by the time
infiltrate
we-
the union, it's not going to change.
Agreed.
And that's the problem. De Blasio, the freaking whoever, the other white guy that I can't stand, they're not going to make anything because they're the superintendent, whatever the guy that the chief, whatever the
chief of police?
yeah, he's the
Madeira.
He's retarded.
But
So-
until the union change,
Right,
there's
right.
not going to be any changes, and that's point blank. But the only thing I don't like is that Cuomo's like, yeah, they can do this and they can do that. But you're like the president of New York. Like you can step in and try to have some type of, but he didn't want to do that because he's like, that's their job.
That's
If
his
they don't
job.
want to do that,
That's all
just
them.
like the whole thing where people was rioting and going crazy in Soho and whatever, and then they went wild, and it was like, he's like, no, you're not doing your job.
It's easy to remain neutral.
He's
Because
like,
then you
yeah,
don't have to
you
pick
don't
a
have to,
side.
thank you. He's like, oh, you want to raid Soho? He's like, it was terrible. Soho got raided. Oh, it's terrible the village got raided. Oh, it's terrible. Fordham was crazy. We ran over cops and all that. And then he said that. The next day, what police did? Wild the fuck out. They run over people. They're like, oh, you said I do my job? Oh, I'm going to do my job.
Right.
Now,
You know what I'm saying? But my thing is, you know the union runs the place. It's like if the teachers union, the transit union, they don't mess with the police union because they know they're nothing but thugs.
Yeah.
They need to dismantle that union. And that's why a lot of companies, they were like, oh, go union, because I'm from Verizon, with the wireless side, and they want us to be pro-union. But once you get in the union, it's like a mafia. They're hard to dismantle. They're hard to get you out, and that's the problem. They need to dismantle that union, and once they do that, it can make a change. They can make all the changes they want, but just like if they're not going to sit down with any other, like the NBA and the whatever union they have, if they don't make the change or whatever, it's not going to make a change.
Right.
The problem.
Can I say something? I love this. I love his car.
I'm gonna bleep out a lot of stuff, like the fact that you work for.
One of y'all for really,
right.
He's really doing it.
And
I love the fact that
I got you. Like I'm gonna tell you afterwards. You can tell me not to put up.
It doesn't happen.
No. Because you know what? Here's the thing. Two things. Number one, if you have somebody who's really a go hard, I'll just say go hard. Listen to voices, right? So I might try to fix some things and whatever. And the second thing is, we're talking about something controversial. We talked a lot of controversial topics, and actually being recorded now. Sorry, not being recorded. So the fact there are going to be people who are looking for you, for your voice, I want to protect you.